And so we've been working on this through this year, and today we've had a symposium with the contribution of many members of the initiative plus some international visitors. So we are taking the opportunity to put on this session today and have a conversation for a large audience on these topics.
The common theme is the position in which we are all believers and followers of this one particular God. But more generally, I'm exhausted of hearing these things.
About those fake papers that Peter and Helen
Let's
and I
tell
wrote.
everybody what those are, just because it's an amazing source of enjoyment and entertainment for folks that are looking for something to read.
Right. So we don't lose the point real quick. We did in less than 10 months the almost equivalent of a whole academic career in this stuff, and we're amateurs.
And
so
you did
it's
it
easy.
as a joke,
As
and
a
it
joke.
got passed off as real and then actually applauded.
That's right. So we wrote 20 fake academic papers in these exact fields: critical race theory,
So we should
gender
tell
studies.
Peter Boghossian did it with you,
Yeah.
and
Helen Pluckrose.
is Pluckrose.
Yeah, Pluckrose.
Pluckrose.
Second most English name
and she
ever.
wrote
yeah.
Cynical Theories with you.
Yeah. So
Yeah, that's a very English name.
it is a very English name. So we wrote these papers to try to show that this scholarship is bogus.
Right.
And so we spent just under a year writing crazy stuff.
Please tell people the dog park one.
You love them. So
My
the
favorite.
dog park paper was actually, I think, kind of the masterpiece of the thing. So we wrote this paper where we claimed that we were a feminist researcher who spent 1,000 hours in Portland, Oregon dog parks over the course of 1 year. Never in the heavy rain. We put that in the paper. Never in the heavy rain. Like that's some relevant detail or something. So 1,000 hours over a year is already ridiculous. That's like 6 hours a day, every day.
That's so much time.
I know. And what we said she did was she watched these dog fights and dog rapes and all this stuff, and we put this crazy stuff in there, like sometimes they try to break up a dog fight by doing jumping jacks by the dog or singing songs. It's just ridiculous. And the dogs were pooping on each other. We put that in the paper. And then we said when there was a dog humping, that she would go up and she would inspect the dog's genitals, and she inspected 10,000 dogs' genitals and then interrogated the owners about their sexual orientations. And what she wanted to find out was if straight men would discourage gay dog humping versus straight dog humping, and it was different for women and gay men. And then we said we're going to pass that data through black feminist criminology, which makes no sense. And then we said that the conclusion was that dog parks are petri dishes of canine rape culture, and that they are rape condoning spaces just like human nightclubs. So human nightclubs are automatically now rape condoning spaces. And so the conclusion was that we now have to train men the way that we train dogs.
And by making firm and repeated stands against rape culture in society, activism in media, human males may be metaphorically shocked out of regarding sexual violence, sexual harassment, and rape culture as normative, which may decrease rape rates and disrupt rape culture and emancipate rape condoning spaces. It is also not politically feasible to leash men, yank their leashes when they misbehave, or strike men with leashes or other objects in an attempt to help them desist from sexual aggression and other predatory behaviors.
It's not politically feasible.
It's not politically feasible. Of course, the following caveat applies. Because of my own situatedness as a human rather than as a dog.
And they asked you to do that.
I
They
know.
asked you to specify that. I am not a dog.
Yeah,
I
this is a revision. This was a requested revision in terms of reviewer 3, who asked us to say, while I don't object to this use of rape to describe instances of sexual assault in non-human animals, I think its framing needs more careful work. To start, a more robust definition and explanation of rape in the context of dogs is needed. How did the author ascertain whether the sexual advances of a dog were wanted or unwanted by the other dog involved? This strikes me as likely to open considerable misinterpretation by human onlookers.
The author fairly uncritically tags a number of 1 every hour of sexual encounters between dogs as rape without providing a strong basis for the researcher's knowledge of whether these encounters were wanted or unwanted. The author defines consensual dog sex as when the penetration was not resisted. But what are the author's credentials for assessing dog behavior to this extent? For example, does the author have training in animal behavior that would enable these assessments? The reveal themes of material semiotic proof. I don't even know what that means. Dude, my guy even eat you, man.
I can tell you, man, it was the craziest thing ever. I remember I got the email.
Subject is GPC query in the first few words. Dear Helen, I have a question for you about your article.
Because I just saw the editor and I'm like, oh no, they figured it out, right?
As you may know, GPC is in its 25th year of publication, and as part of honoring that occasion, GPC is going to publish 12 lead pieces over the 12 issues of 2018 and some even into 2019. We would like to publish your piece, Human Reactions to Rape Culture and Queer Performativity at Urban Dog Parks in Portland, Oregon, in the 7th issue. It draws attention to so many themes from past scholarship.
And they give this an award. And so it's like this, the bullshit level is just insane.
What was the award?
So they had a thing. It was their anniversary. The journal is the #1 feminist geography journal in the world.
I still don't really know what feminist geography is for sure.
And wait a second, you don't know what feminist geography is, but we're about to get a paper published in the top feminist geography
I
in the world.
kind of know what it is. I'm not going to say I don't know what it is at all. I don't think I can make it 5 minutes with an actual feminist geographer before I was exposed as a complete
even though you're published in the top journal.
in the top journal.
And there was their 25th anniversary
What's
edition.
the name of the journal?
Gender, Place, and Culture. And it's the leading feminist geography journal in the world. And they had their 25th year, so they're on their 25th anniversary. And so what they wanted to do was highlight one paper per issue the entire year as being exemplary scholarship in feminist geography. And ours was chosen. And so I grabbed, because we're making a documentary about it, right? So we got a filmmaker, Mike Nayna. He's the one that did that 3-part documentary of Evergreen that showed everybody how, that's where everybody's Evergreen now. And so Mike, it was like, anything that happens, film it. So I grabbed my GoPro and I have this footage and it's like sideways.
But I'm trying to process the fact that we seem to have just got some kind of an honor or major recognition for the dog park paper, which is our first acceptance and one of the most ridiculous things that will be in print.
It's almost like the world slid off of its foundation a little bit when they gave that paper an award for me. It was just so weird.
OMFG, and then Helen replied OMG, 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 and I was like, holy shit, and Helen put surprise face, happy face, champagne emoji, and I put holy absolute fuck. And then what this shows, in a sense, with the Gender, Place, and Culture Journal, they don't just think that paper's okay. They think it's exemplary for the field. I don't know what to do with that. The thing is insane. It's so stupid.
Now, what was the response to you guys getting an award for that once you revealed that this was all horseshit?
Oh, she wasn't happy. The editor of that journal was not happy. She felt like betrayed, like, Well,
she was.
She was. But she felt, like I'd been so nice. I was so kind to her, and she was very kind to me. She was a very nice person. Most of these people, that's very important. But these are mostly nice people. There are some hustlers. And they take advantage of that situation. Yeah. Because that's what this is really wide open to, is hustlers.
She was a nice person, but she's living in that world, and she thought that all that stuff made sense.
Yeah. That's the thing, is they think this stuff's all real. Like, yeah. It's like they've kind of gone into this mass delusion where everything's power dynamics, and the power dynamics define how everybody experiences life. And
well, you nailed it.
We did.
You really nailed it. You came so close to reality, but yet still lived in the world of parody.
That's right.
But you said all the things that you need. It just shows that there's such a high tolerance for bullshit.
That's right.
In those air quotes disciplines.
Right. And those air quotes disciplines are now being like mainlined into like every university, every school, every corporate boardroom.
How did that happen?
We were talking about, the raising the frequency thing when these events happen, but mostly it's that they took over our colleges of education about 1980. And so they've been slowly turning teachers to the project. And then in 2002 and 3, there were a couple Supreme Court cases that were talking about affirmative action. And they said that if you want to do affirmative action, you can do it if it increases diversity and equity and inclusion. So they started to build these offices in the university. And those university offices started to like dictate what you could and couldn't say. You could get in trouble or brought up to hearings. Even if the hearing finds you innocent, you still had to waste your time going through this humiliating hearing. And they're bringing up stuff and all your, how do you imagine you're like in a department, right? And you get hauled before the diversity office. What are all your colleagues thinking about you now?
I wanted to run something past you. I had a weird experience with Pete, and I want to try to use you to unpack it. He sends me a message, says, come up to my room, I'm in bed. And I brought my camera up to the room.
Teddy and I are hanging out. My Crohn's disease is bugging me. I'm translating a chapter of Mein Kampf into feminist theory.
Okay. Was he in a bathrobe? I can't remember, he probably was. So he gets into the story.
But they've weaponized institutional mechanisms against me.
And the story is very interesting from my perspective.
Okay.
But he cuts it off halfway.
No, they've already accused me of that. No, but seriously, don't put that in there because I had to sign papers and stuff with the diversity board.
What do you mean?
No, like don't put that in there.
Like that you had to sign that you wouldn't talk about the accusations against you?
Yeah. So I legally can't do that.
Yeah, you're not allowed to talk about it. They make you sign stuff to say you won't talk about it with anybody. It's confidential, blah, blah, blah.
So what do you know about what happened to Pete?
I mean, I know he was stressed out a lot, but I don't know a whole lot because he's not allowed to talk about it.
But he talked about it to you some.
He talked about how stressed out he was. He said, constantly telling me he'd come to work and, he didn't know if he was going to have to go to the diversity board again today. And he's telling me that he was being accused of stuff that was just ridiculous. He's telling me people were coming up to him on campus and asking him different things that he'd been accused of. He didn't even know he's being investigated for. One of them was even, what's this I hear about you beating your wife and kids? I think 2 people asked him that in a single day or something like that. He didn't even know he was under investigation for that.
So someone made a complaint against Pete, and then the university, someone from the diversity board, started investigating.
Right.
And word got back to Pete that they were talking about him beating his wife and kids.
Yeah, they were asking like everybody. They were asking his students, his former students, his TAs, his former TAs, his colleagues, other people in the department.
First of all, having met Pete and his wife, that's not happening.
No, that's not happening.
She'd beat him maybe. But second of all, if that, even if that kind of thing was true, you would expect someone to go to police.
Right.
So what's that got to do with diversity?
So the goal of diversity is to create a more diverse group of ethnicities, but demographic diversity. So, whether it's women, whether it's sexual or racial minorities, whether it's, national origin, whatever it is. You want to increase the amount of diversity. And under the idea of inclusion, somebody who is made to feel uncomfortable, whether it's, somebody speaking in a way that makes them uncomfortable, somebody's being offensive, somebody actually is discriminatory, that would make those people feel unwelcome under this approach or this theory that the board operates under. And so you have to make sure that people who are causing that discomfort have to be corrected or retrained or sanctioned or fired to make sure that that's not a problem.
So it's policing offense.
It's policing offense, absolutely, yeah.
So they've created their own police and court system to...
Yeah.
It's like an in-house court system.
Within the institution, yeah.
For offense.
For offense, that's correct.
It's hard to unpack, right? Like, are they within their right to do something like that?
I think the answer to that is kind of, but not really, because they keep getting sued for these kinds of trials they put people through, and then people get fired, or if they're students, they get expelled. Something happens to them, they get sanctioned on campus or whatever, and then they get sued, and then the courts side against the university pretty much every time.
So how big is something like this? Most universities have these diversity boards, don't they?
Yeah, I think probably almost every university in the English-speaking world at least has them now.
So what has this got to do with the subjects that you guys are looking into?
These ideas, diversity, equity, and inclusion, were theorized pretty much right out of these disciplines that we're looking at. Nearly every paper that's in anything to do with education talks about at least one of these ideas: increasing diversity or making more inclusive educational spaces, including marginalized voices or something like that. So it's pretty central to what we're looking at. From the perspective of the diversity board, they can create ideological conformity at the school by making it, all you have to have is make it known that if you step out of line, if you make somebody uncomfortable, or you step afoul of a protected class, or somebody files a complaint because they don't like how you're behaving, that you're going to get put through some possibly horrendous investigation. People are going to dig into your past. They're going to call your friends and family and say you've been accused of these terrible things. It's just easier to keep your head down and try not to get on the wrong side of it.
And in Pete's case, what happened? What happened at the end of these investigations?
As far as I know, he was found not guilty on all charges after he got dragged through like a year and a half of stress. Even if the hearing finds you innocent, you still had to waste your time going through this humiliating hearing, and they're bringing up stuff and all your, how do you imagine you're like in a department, right? And you get hauled before the diversity office. What are all your colleagues thinking about you now? Like, what did he do? Right?
Of course.
So all of a sudden it starts just pushing everybody to not criticize this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And
self-censorship.
Exactly.
Out of fear.
Silencing people, getting them to silence themselves, actually. And so then they take that lack of criticism, and then they can just go crazy with their stuff. It's like critical race theory specifically. People email me all the time and they say, where are the scholarly criticisms of critical race theory? And I actually write back, I'm like, you're not allowed to do that. Like the most recent ones in law journals, like substantive ones, are from the 1990s. So there's nobody criticizing this stuff.
Oh, wow.
So when you aren't criticizing it, I mean, scholarship depends on people shooting down your bad ideas.
Peer review.
When South Park talks about them smelling their own farts or whatever, smelling each other's farts, it literally, it's that's what's happening.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever telling them that they're wrong. Nobody's ever allowed to, and you can't criticize it. Why? Because if you criticize critical race theory, you must be a racist.
The strange thing to me is that the university turned its back on you and doubled down on the equity, which just melted the whole place down. Is that a correct way to look at it?
That is a correct way to look at it.
And not just that, but the Attorney General's office, and specifically the Assistant Attorney General that was working on this case on behalf of the college, had clearly accepted and internalized the whole equity argument. And basically, it seemed that she thought she was dealing with a couple of no-good racists who the college would be better off without.
You're kidding me. So there's institutions and even right up to government that threw you guys under the bus.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, I have to say, I keep being invited to talk about free speech on college campuses. And every time I'm invited, I make the same point, which is this isn't about free speech, and this is only tangentially about college campuses. This is about a breakdown in the basic logic of civilization, and it's spreading. And college campuses may be the first dramatic battle, but of course this is going to find its way into the courts. It's already found its way into the tech sector. It's going to find its way to the highest levels of governance if we're not careful, and it actually does jeopardize the ability of civilization to continue to function.
How has it gotten to this point?
In part, it has gotten to this point because we let it fester. These ideas were wrong when they first took hold in the academy, and instead of shutting them down, we created phony fields that act as a kind of analytical affirmative action, where ideas that do not deserve to survive are given sustenance. These ideas are so toxic and so ill-conceived that to the extent that they are allowed to hold sway, as if one truth is equal to every other truth, right? My truth is as good as your truth. To the extent that that idea is allowed to pervade other institutions on which civilization depends, civilization will come apart. So we have to fight this. And don't get the sense that it is just about college campuses or kids overreacting, because that ain't what this is. This is far more important than that.
Ek al die bittere bitsige ontwikkeling wat sukkel om die vinger in my gesig te verklaar. Ek wil myself verdedig teen die stewige beledigings en deeglik nou die bewings van die storm laat verdaar. Steek ek self 'n vinger uit, wys dit altyd terug na my, dis eintlik in myself met wie ek eindeloos beklei. My vingers in 'n vleis en ek hou dus nou stywer as 'n minnaar teen 'n lyf. My lewe soos 'n bedryf, so voort soos 'n asem, die tyd mors is waansin, is verbasend hoe vinnig ek kan gaan van 0 tot rasend. Vat dit ons persoonlik en ek konker elke oomblik op verantwoordelik is die woorde selfs nog groter as my kop.
Everybody wants that dream shot. It's just like
Pops is 'n ballonskop wat in die grond die pop is in my mond stop vir 'n sekond. Pops is 'n ballonskop wat in die grond die pop is in my mond stop vir 'n sekond.